Keychron appears to be getting into the 2.4 GHz game with their keyboards because two recently announced updated versions have now included this additional wireless connection, and one of them is this keyboard here, the V1 Max. For just $94, the V1 Max offers a 75% layout, QMK firmware, Bluetooth, and 2.4 GHz connections in a gasket mount design. Is this the new king of 75% budget mechanical keyboards? Let's take a closer look. Before we dive in, I want to mention that this video is not sponsored and I purchased the V1 Max myself. Keychron does occasionally send me keyboards to review, but they did not send me the V1 Max and I wanted to review it, so I bought it myself. I'm also not an affiliate with Keychron directly, but if it does become available on Amazon, I will include an Amazon affiliate link as well as a link to Keychron's website in the description of this video. I recently reviewed the K2 Pro from Keychron, another 75% QMK keyboard that I was kind of underwhelmed with, honestly. At the price point of about $110 for the RGB hot swappable model, there was some things to be desired there. Most notably, the ABS plastic case was not the nicest material. It was a little rough around the edges. On paper, the V1 Max here is actually a big upgrade over the K2 Pro for less money. So let's walk through the features and specs, and then we'll talk about pros and cons. The Keychron V1 Max is a 75% keyboard with 84 keys, a rotary encoder knob, and an ANSI layout. At the time of recording, it is not available in an ISO layout, but Keychron offers many keyboards in an ISO layout, so it's possible that it may be available in the future. The case is made of ABS plastic and the dimensions are 328.5 by 148.7 by 29.4 millimeters, and the weight is 770 grams. There are 3 available typing angles with 2-position fold-out feet. Connectivity includes Bluetooth for up to 3 devices, 2.4 GHz with a 1000 Hz polling rate, and USB-C wired, also with a 1000 Hz polling rate. There are 2 receivers for the 2.4 GHz connection that are stored in the back of the V1 Max, one with a USB-A connection and one with a USB-C connection. However, they cannot both be used at the same time. On the back, there is also an operating system switch to change between pre-programmed Mac and Windows layouts, as well as a switch for the connection modes. The PCB is hot swappable and compatible with 3 and 5-pin switches. The mounting is a gasket mount design with foam between the PCB and the plate, and case foam underneath. The switch plate is polycarbonate. Stabilizers are PCB mount screw-in variety and can be replaced if desired. Switch options include Keychron Jupiter Red, Brown, and Banana. Keycaps are double-shot PBT in the OSA profile, which has a slightly rounded top. Backlighting is south-facing RGB, and the included keycaps are not shine-through, although south-facing LEDs are not the best at illuminating shine-through legends. The battery capacity is 4000 mAh with an estimated use time of up to 220 hours with the backlighting off, or up to 100 hours with the backlighting on the lowest setting. The V1 Max features QMK firmware and is VIA compatible for remapping and adding macros. The V1 Max has a price of $94 US through Keychron's website for the pre-built model or $79 for the bare-bones model. All right, now let's get into the pros and cons of the V1 Max. First up, the pros. Let's just start by addressing how much you're getting here for the price. Yes, this is a budget-friendly keyboard with a all-plastic build, but you're getting QMK firmware here via customization, a gasket mount PCB with a nice amount of flex, screw-in stabilizers, 2.4 GHz with 1000 Hz polling, 2 different 2.4 GHz receivers, Keychron made switches, and pretty good battery life. That is fantastic for a price of $94. And yes, shipping direct from Keychron is going to push that over $100. So we can't say that it's under $100 in terms of the total price you're going to pay, but still, a little over $100 with shipping and tax included. That's fantastic for all of the features you're getting here. Next, let me just specifically address the plastic build. This is much nicer than the K2 Pro. It's nice and smooth plastic. It actually looks nice, and it's like they thought about it for more than 10 seconds. The K2 Pro was like the most basic plastic I have seen on a keyboard in a long time, and it was even rough in places, just not very nice. This competes much more closely with the EpoMaker TH80 Pro in terms of build quality. And of course, I have to call out the wireless connectivity as a big pro here. The 2.4 gigahertz connection is something I've been wanting Keychron to do for a long time, and it seems like they've finally been adding it with their more recently released keyboards. But not only did they add a 2.4 gigahertz connection with a 1000 hertz polling rate to the V1 Max, but they're giving you two receivers. One is USB-A and one is USB-C, and there's built-in storage here for both of them. So if you're using one and not the other, you've got storage for it. And if you're using it with a computer like a MacBook that only has USB-C ports and there's no USB-A port, and you're not currently using a dock, you're good to go. You can still use the 2.4 gigahertz receiver. I haven't seen anybody else do this, at least not in this price range, so I think it's awesome that they give you both options. And they both worked perfectly for me. I do want to point out though, they can't be both used at the same time. It won't communicate to both receivers at the same time. It kind of pairs with whichever one is currently connected to a computer as soon as you put it into the 2.4 gigahertz mode. And you can't manually switch back and forth between them. But Keychron wasn't done there. They actually provide you with a little USB-A to C adapter that you can take with your cable. You can plug one end of the cable into your computer, which by the way, there's also another USB-C to A adapter here. So if you have a USB-A port on a dock or something, or your Windows computer, and you want to plug that in, you can. You can plug one end to your computer, you can plug the adapter into the other end, and then take your USB-A receiver. So if you have an issue with how far away the receiver is from your keyboard, or if you have obstructions in the way, you can use this to get your receiver closer to the keyboard by positioning it up on your desk somewhere where there's a nice clear line of sight. They kind of thought of everything here, which is shocking considering this is like one of the first keyboards they put 2.4 gigahertz in. So I have to say, well done, Keychron. I also want to point out, as a pro here, I did not need to use this. I actually had a nice stable connection with either of the 2.4 gigahertz receivers. I had no need to use the sort of extension with the adapter to get it closer to the keyboard to work. It just worked fine in my current arrangement, which is great. Now, another pro is the battery life. It's pretty good here. It's got a 4,000 milliamp hour battery and over 200 hours of life with the lighting off. And that's pretty respectable use time between charges. Now, it's not like super amazing. It's not like you're gonna go 3 months without charging this, but getting over a month of use time with none of the lights on, that's pretty good these days. It's quite respectable. Another pro would be the gasket mount design and the polycarbonate plate that you're getting here. It has a fair amount of flex and a nice softer typing feel, which I do personally prefer for longer typing periods. It also gives you a fantastic sort of baseline for getting into customizing your keyboard. Keychron even encourages you to take it apart because they include an Allen key, a screwdriver, and some extra screws here in the box. So they're basically asking me to open this up and tinker around with it. But also, if you have no interest in that at all, I think it was the right choice to go with a gasket mount design here to get a little bit more flexibility. And the polycarbonate plate I prefer over the steel plate that was in the K2 Pro. Now, the one difference here is going to be the weight. This is lighter weight feeling than the K2 Pro for two reasons. We'll talk about that in the cons in just a second. Now, the last pro that I'll mention here is the Keychron Jupiter switches. They seem to be a little bit of an upgrade over the K Pro switches that Keychron has been offering in several of their keyboards, including the K Pro line. And these are Keychron Jupiter banana switches. I also find them quite nice. If you like a firm tactile response, then the banana switches would be the way to go. I haven't tried the Jupiter red or brown switches though, so I can't really speak to those. I'm actually not sure if Keychron made the K Pro switches for Keychron, which is possible, but either way, the quality of these seems to be just a little bit better. And the final pro that I'll mention is that you are getting full QMK firmware via capability at such a great price point. I did mention this in the long list of features that you're getting for the price, but I want to specifically call out that for this price, it's great to get QMK firmware. You can use VIA on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So this can get you into that world of customization on an open source platform as well. All right, now let's talk about a couple of cons here with the V1 Max, and there's really not a lot. At this price point, they did a great job with the V1 Max. But I do want to talk about something a little bit subjective here. So this is, again, going to come down to personal taste. I find the sound of this to be just a little bit hollow, which is not uncommon for all plastic keyboards. But one thing that Keychron has actually done in other keyboards like their K Pro line to help reduce the amount of hollow sound is in the bottom, instead of regular foam, they had been putting silicone padding, which is much more dense, it's much more heavy. And that can help prevent some of that hollow sound where lighter weight foam doesn't really do as much. And unfortunately in the V1 Max, they went with lighter weight foam in the bottom of the case. So overall, the keyboard feels fairly lightweight, and it also sounds a little bit more hollow. Your polycarbonate plate is not really gonna help that either, because polycarbonate doesn't add any significant weight here. So overall, the sound profile is not bad. It's fairly well controlled, but there's a bit of a hollow sound there. And so I personally am very tempted to just pop this open and do a little tinkering so that I can get more of the sound profile that I personally prefer, which is a little bit of a deeper sound and kind of less hollow. Speaking of sounds you don't like, there is a little bit of stabilizer rattle here. The stabilizers are lubricated. The Enter key sounds pretty good. I've got some rattle here going on the backspace key, a little bit of rattle coming from the space bar. So a little bit of tuning to the stabilizers also, would probably benefit there. The only other con I really have here, especially keeping the price point in mind, is about the keycaps. They're comfortable to type on. I like the shape of them, but in terms of their overall quality, they have a little bit of room for improvement there. So they are double shot, but the double shot is only in the very top of the keycap. It's not a full layer that you see in some higher quality double shot keycaps. And so overall, I think maybe a more dense, heavier keycap would also improve the sound a little bit. It's not like they feel really cheap. They feel nice to type on in general. And for the price point, I wouldn't expect top quality keycaps, but I did want to point that out. And that's really it for cons. At this price point, slightly below $100, you don't expect a perfect mechanical keyboard here because you've got to cut costs somewhere. It's understandable. If you're looking at keyboards like the K2 Pro and the TH80 Pro from EpoMaker, I would pick the V1 Max, honestly. It would be an easy selection for me. You've still got a knob here, which you don't have on the K2 Pro. You've got QMK, which you don't have on the EpoMaker TH80 Pro. You've got reliable 2.4 gigahertz with two different receivers that neither one of those offer. And I think Keychron finally did budget 75% right. So with all of those great things that I've said about the V1 Max here, who is it not for? Who would I say don't bother with the V1 Max? It really depends on what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is a keyboard that feels premium, feels like it's made out of really high quality materials, then the V1 Max might not be everything that you hoped it would be, because after all, it is still an all plastic keyboard. It feels a little bit lightweight. If what you're looking for is really a premium feel, then you're probably gonna wanna be looking at keyboards that have an aluminum case, something more like the Q Pro line from Keychron, but the Q Pro line doesn't have the 2.4 gigahertz receiver. So if that matters to you, if that's a big pro for you, having those 2.4 gigahertz connection options, then the Q Pro line doesn't, at least not yet, they don't have that at the time that I'm recording this. So that's just something to keep in mind. So that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of the V1 Max. Let me know if you picked one up yourself and how you're liking it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech and Gear channel if you want to see more content like this. And hey, why not check out the video that's up here in the corner right now, actually, while you're here. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.